Look who is in the operating room again. Hi, my name is Zach Oki. I'm a retina specialist here in Irvine, California. And why am I here? So the patient I'm treating today is a long-standing patient of mine. I first met him in the summer of 2024. And at the time, his right eye had a vitreous hemorrhage. There were a lot of bleeding things happening in his right eye. And when I met him, I noticed that he had really potent glasses on. He was actually -8. In other words, he was really nearsighted. I looked inside of the right eye and I found some bleeding and there was a retinal tear. So we lasered the retinal tear to prevent a retinal detachment and everything went really well. But then unfortunately a cataract matured and therefore he underwent cataract surgery. Shortly after cataract surgery, his right eye developed a shadow and then he came back to my clinic and we diagnosed a retinal detachment and we treated it right then and there. Things went really well, but then his cataract in his other eye started to mature. And I warned him, as soon as cataract happens, then there may be a chance of more floaters, in other words, a posterior vitreous detachment or a PVD. And indeed, soon thereafter, maybe a couple months after his left eye underwent cataract surgery, he developed a posterior vitreous detachment, lots of new floaters. We followed it very carefully. And this was approximately 3-4 months ago. Everything went really well. I pushed on his eye, didn't find a retinal tear or anything like that, but then he called today. He said, today I'm seeing some new floaters. Well, actually, he started to see new floaters yesterday. And he called the clinic I saw and he said, I need another appointment. There's some more floaters happening. But then he called the emergency number this morning and he said, I'm starting to see a shadow down here. And what did we diagnose? We found a retinal detachment now in the other eye. I'm telling you, this is myopia. Why do I say this is myopia? Well, there's one thing that I like to tell my patients. After a posterior vitreous detachment, that is the gel separating away from the retina, pulling on the retina, theoretically could cause a retinal tear. The risk of a retinal tear happening that could cause a retinal detachment declines substantially over the course of a 6-week period, except in people who are nearsighted. I keep telling people I don't really think we understand the risk of retinal tears and detachments for myopic or nearsighted people that well, because while we do claim that the chance of finding a retinal tear in the first weeks after a posterior vitreous detachment is valid, for nearsighted people it can happen again at some other point. This likely stems from how long the eye is. If the eye is really long, then when the vitreous separates away from the retina, it does so incompletely at the outset. And then further later in time, it may separate again, and that may be an opportunity for a retinal tear to develop. So this is just really a message for my nearsighted people. If you see new floaters or shadows, even after PVD symptoms, still get an eye exam.